Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Auromar Natural Processed Panama from Apollon's Gold. And there's the bag right there. And Apollon's Gold, based out of Tokyo, Japan. And this is part 3 of our 4-part Apollon's Gold series, and one of 2 main reasons for us doing this series, as this is a natural processed Panamanian Geisha, and we're yet to review any natural processed coffees from Apollon's Gold up to this point. But in addition to that, Apollon's Gold is the only coffee roaster I've seen carrying this specific coffee. So I'm definitely looking forward to discussing this one, as this right here is day 64. And once again, they do have a brew guide on the back of their bags, which roughly translates to a 15.625 to a 16.67 to 1 water to coffee ratio, brewed between 93 and 97 degrees Celsius. Which is right in line with our standard recipe, and that's what we went for with this one. A 16 to 1 water to coffee ratio, brewed at 96 degrees Celsius, about 205 degrees Fahrenheit. And I like this one best through the Chemex, which indicates a medium grind. Now, roast profile for this one, as we've alluded to with Apollon's Gold, they do roast on the very light side of things. This one is still very light, but maybe not quite as light feeling as some of the previous coffees we had reviewed, but definitely still very light by most standards and metrics. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. Day 45, first impression, and it was absolutely stunning right from the first sip, as it was very reminiscent of the El Obraje that we had reviewed from the barn towards the end of last year, as it had a wonderfully vibrant tropicality as well as a florality aspect to it right at the forefront. Very reminiscent of pineapple juice as well, with a stone fruit complexity, giving this one a very positive first impression. Day 48. Ran it through the Chemex, and it was even better the second time around, as once again it was reminiscent of the El Obraje in a slightly more clean manner on this day, with a wildly vibrant tropical component, emphasis on the pineapple juice yet again, passion fruit, florality, a lot of similar traits and characteristics for what we had with the El Obraje. So another great day of this coffee. Day 51, and the first asterisk I have because I was sick on this day. Ran it through the April dripper, and it was another nice day. It was skewing a little bit more towards the florality on this day, as there were some bright purple floral aspects in abundance to complement the very strong tropical components. In addition to that, the passion fruit was a little bit more pronounced on this day as well, which isn't something I necessarily love about this coffee, or any coffee if I'm being completely honest. But even then, it was still a nice day. So we continue on to day 54, as the coffee was interestingly a lot more tame on this day, as it did have a little bit more clarity, but it was at the cost of vibrancy, as there was a little more of this herbal component, and it seemed to focus a little on the lighter floral aspects as opposed to what was a little bit more of a vibrant florality. There's still an abundance of citrus, and there's slightly less of the defined pineapple with a little bit more of a moderate stone fruit. So this was a V60 day, and it wasn't necessarily my favorite day. We continue on to day 57, as the cup is much better through the Chemex, and that's why I settled on the Chemex being my preferred brew method, as it weirdly felt a lot more vibrant through the Chemex, which isn't always the case, but with this coffee specifically, I definitely found that to be the theme. Again, reminiscent of the El Obraje, as it had great clarity for a natural processed coffee, very pineapple and passion fruit forward with so many more of those vibrant floral aspects to it. A very lively cup in general, especially on this day. Day 60. Final notes we have, and the cup is mostly pineapple juice forward on this day, with again a vibrant florality complementing that sweeter citric aspect. In addition to that, there's some stone fruits, some passion fruit yet again. But what I have to say about this coffee is that it's very well defined, so a lot of these notes weren't overly difficult to pick out. Sometimes it can be a little tricky, but one benefit of natural processed Panamanian Geishas are they typically tend to have defined profiles to begin with. Sometimes they can be a little complex, but when things are this pronounced, it makes it very easy and straightforward, which is the other thing I have. Clean, pretty nice all around. Kind of enjoyed the way that this coffee did end up turning out by the end. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we were getting. All right, and we have 3 level 5s. So let's go through those real quick, and we'll start with the cleanliness at a level 5. And truth be told, this is on the lower side of level 5. So it's still a very, very clean coffee, and you could mistake this for a wash in terms of the clarity that is present within this one. So that's massive credits to Apollon's Gold for this coffee specifically, as it did come out very clean right from the onset. There were times with the V60 and maybe with the April dripper that I would bump that down to the higher side of level 4. But I think by the end, especially with the Chemex, it justifies itself at that level 5 mark. Florality, level 5, yes, and once again, especially through the Chemex, as it really seemed to accentuate a lot of the more vibrant floral components within this one. They were on the slightly darker side of those florals, so I definitely see that being there. Probably the second most pronounced characteristic right after the pineapple, which is in line with that citrus fruit right there at that level 5 mark. And once again, those three things definitely justified those level 5s, as this one had so many similar characteristics to Yellow Brahe, which also scored in those same numbers as well. Then we have a couple of level 4s. We'll start with the finish. Level 4, it does finish out very nicely. So in no way is this coffee overbearing at any point, and that's one thing I liked about it. So not too much to say in terms of the finish. Sweetness, level 4. Yes, I will say that this is the sweetest coffee I've had from Apollon's Gold up to this point. We finally reached that level 4 mark, and that's why it was such a big deal for this coffee to reach that stage for me. Berry fruit, level 4. That's that passion fruit, and if one thing I have to say about this one relative to the Yellow Brahe is this one didn't have quite as strong of that passion fruit-like aspect to it. This one was a little bit more floral and a little bit more pineapple forward, which is a positive thing because, as mentioned, I would prefer a little less of that passion fruit aspect to the cup. Stone fruit, level 4. I'll be completely honest, this is one of the parts I liked a little less about this coffee. Was I was hoping for some very wild and vibrant peach, but that was probably maybe the 4th or 5th most pronounced thing behind the pineapple juice, the citrus, the florality, as well as that passion fruit. So it's there. It's a little buried underneath all of the other abundant flavors you're getting. It's on the lower side of the level 4, but it's definitely still present within this one. Level 3 for the acidity. That's an interesting one, I have to say, because this one wasn't quite as bright as all of the other coffees we've reviewed from Apollon's Gold up to this point. I think I'd mentioned that they all had a very strong brightness to them that scored that level 4 mark minimum. I could be missing one, but as far as I recall, they all had so much brightness to them. Well, this one didn't have that same level of brightness, which is kind of interesting to me. Also, selling points to me, as acidity isn't necessarily the most important factor. And then last thing probably worth discussing is the body right there at level 2. Lighter bodied cup of coffee in general, likely attributed to the fact that we preferred this one through the Chemex. Even then, it still had a little bit of texture and structure to it, so I'm happy with that being there at that level 2. And I'm actually quite happy with the way that this tasting wheel looks. I think it's a pretty good representation of what we were getting from this coffee. All right, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. I'll start with the positive, and the positive is that up to this point, this is my favorite coffee that I've ever had from Apollon's Gold, as it reached a lot of the marks I'd been hoping for from their previous coffees. It did have great sweetness. It was very clean, had great florality and great fruit aspects to it, all of those in abundance. So for those reasons, it's my type of coffee, and I was very happy with the way that all of those things turned out. Now, one thing that's a slight negative is I think this coffee actually really made me appreciate just how good Yellow Brahe was last year, because for a wash processed Colombian Panamanian Geisha, that one was very similar to this one, but it was noticeably cleaner. I would say that that was the cleanest of these coffees that have had a lot of these passion fruit and pineapple juice-like aspects, but that one was even more well-defined too. So if I was comparing these two coffees side by side, I would lean towards the Yellow Brahe, which is interesting because I think in theory this should actually be a higher-end coffee, so it didn't quite reach the same level and standards of that coffee, but I think it's just going to show how well that coffee is aging in my mind, as this one was still great, but the reason it didn't achieve maybe higher heights in my own impression is because I've just had a coffee that was very similar to this that I happened to like a little bit more than I liked this one. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to, I'm gonna focus on the strong florality as well as that strong pineapple juice-like aspect, because those are very defined within this cup. And if you like those things, then this one will be a real big winner for you. But it also offers some great Panamanian Geisha characteristics, as it is really high on the clarity, it is really high on the sweetness, and it does seem to focus specifically on those floral aspects as well. So just think maybe on the more vibrant side of these Panamanian Geishas. Kind of the best way I can leave this review. If you by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, I would love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But this right here has been a review of the Auromar Natural Processed Panama from Apollon's Gold. Thank you for watching.